How in the world do some of us get into situations where we can talk to someone about the gospel, let alone the stress that that can cause? Let me say a couple of things on that. The first one is, it doesn't necessarily start with words. One of the most important things to square up when we're young is to be the kind of person that people do meet and look at and go, there's something different about you. And God can do that for you. If you are living the Christian life, and it can even be as simple as the way you speak. I worked in petrol stations when I was at university for some time. It was a pretty rough and tumble kind of crowd. And the thing that people noticed first was, you don't talk dirty. It was the most obvious thing. And that actually led them to ask further questions. I mean, how simple is that? The way we conduct ourselves is crucial. I heard a story about a lady who was she was a cleaner in a hospital. And she was a cleaner in that hospital for years. And she was a very under-the-radar person. She was somebody that people didn't tend to notice. She was in there after hours, and she actually had a sense that, work is just work, and I get home and I do more important things. And after about 10 years in this hospital, as she was leaving one evening, one of the surgeons who was working there said to her, "Now listen," he said, "I've been watching you." And he said, "What is it about you?" And she clammed up and was like, what do I say? And she said, "Jesus Christ," and walked out. And that surgeon became a Christian. And the reason I know that story is because I was listening to his testimony. And he said the difference in her life got him thinking and got him started. So don't underestimate what God actually can do. Here's another thing to do, but you've got to be prepared to follow through on it. If you do worry that you don't get opportunities, pray for opportunities. I had this happen to me in a remarkable way. I had a moment where I was thinking, I'm working around other Christians. I'm rubbing shoulders all day in the office with Christians. How can I have, and a lot of people around the place sort of identify who you are and react to you on that basis. And I thought, how can I have an ordinary conversation with someone? How can I have these random happenstance relationships and evangelize? And I prayed that I'd have an opportunity. Do you know, I went for a walk one evening at 9 p.m. in the rain, and I came across a man who was in the process of committing suicide. This was here in Canberra. And I was on the top of one of the local hills, and it was cold as anything, late, and I got over the hill and there was a guy with a noose, and he was standing on a stool, and he was ready to go. And I thought, whoa. Anyway, I turned like this, I said a quick prayer, and then I just walked over to him. And I said, "Oh, lovely evening." I said, I couldn't help but notice that you're standing up on that stool. Can I ask what's going on? I said I wasn't good at small talk, all right? And this guy said, "What does it look like?" And we ended up talking on the top of that hill for hours. And I thought, well, this is the sort of situation where you've got nothing to lose. And so I said, have you thought about God? And he went, "Ugh," like this. And he said, "I come from a Christian family." And we talked for 4 hours until 1 o'clock in the morning about all this stuff. Here's the thing, right? Why on earth did I do the stupid thing of going for a walk at 9 o'clock at night in the rain, in the bush? It's not something I usually do. So I don't know why I did it. I just got up and thought, I'm going for a walk. I just think I was meant to be there. It's just what God answers prayers when you say your prayers. But you've got to be prepared. Sometimes the answer comes. But also I want to say this. Sometimes you do muck it up. And it's, just pray for another go. God's merciful. He knows that we fail sometimes. One of the things that, really launched ACL's profile 3 years ago was the Israel Folau thing. I had 2 cracks at that. The first time Folau posted something on his social media and Channel 7 rang, I said I wouldn't do the interview. And afterwards, I reflected on that and I thought that was wrong. I thought, you gutless, lily-livered little coward. And I prayed and I said, Lord, forgive me. I said no, and I should have said yes. 6 months later, the phone rang again, and this time it was Channel 10, the project. And I thought, well, I know what I've got to say. I've got to say yes. God gives you a second chance sometimes. And here's the other thing, even when we do mess it up, I heard another testimony. I was in Western Sydney at a church, and there were two people getting baptised, and one guy got up, his name was Burke, I think. He was Malaysian, I think, let's say Malaysian, and he was working in New Zealand. He was a Buddhist, and he was working in New Zealand, and while he was there at his office, he was just sitting at his desk one evening, working away late. And a very awkward colleague of his walked up to the desk and was kind of obviously nervous. And sort of Burke says to him, "What's up?" And he goes, "Burke, I just want you to know you're a sinner and you're going to hell." Burke went, "Okay." And then this guy got flummoxed and walked off. I kind of have this vision of this guy sitting there going, "Man, I'm an idiot. What am I doing? I shouldn't have even tried." Do you know something? Burke went home that very night and he walked in the door and he had a massive argument with his wife. Anyway, they slammed the door and all the rest of it. It was all, he was angry. Anyway, he then went and sat down on the end of his bed. All of a sudden, he heard the guy saying, "You're a sinner and you're going to hell." And he thought, wow, I think it's true. Because he felt so wretched about the interaction he'd had. And he said he couldn't get this idea out of his head to such an extent that he actually started to seek. He prayed that God reveal himself. He found a church, all the rest of it. And he was getting baptised in Western Sydney about 18 months ago when I was in this church. So, even when you don't get it quite right, God can still use a witness and a testimony. I think really it's the condition of the heart that matters more than anything. That's why one of the things we must not get in the habit of doing is looking at, I think John Steenhoff made this reference this morning, is looking at the way someone has done something and saying, "Oh, well, I wouldn't have done it like that. I would have been more nuanced, and, that's a little bit crude. And why did he post a meme that wasn't very graphically, sound? Some graphic design principles would have been good." And, I even saw a whole article on the fact with Izzy Folau that he said hell awaits. Well, hell doesn't await. You can't give hell a personality. And so this whole academic piece, and I was like, oh, for heaven's sake. We've got to really not get into the zone of saying, oh, well, they didn't do it precisely the way I did it. Because here's the thing. One day it might be your day in the sun. And you know what? You'll find you didn't do it perfectly. And if they repeat what you said and did over and over and over and over again, you might even start to feel pretty small about it. And people might be able to criticise you about it because not one of us is perfect. I just want to make the point that God undertakes for that stuff. And so I want to plant in our mind the seed this evening that the vocation that we all have is to be evangelists. And it probably is the case that you end up where you end up because God means you to be an evangelist in that context as much as he means you to do the good works that he's given you to do in the vocation that he's given you. And the two things are quite connected most of the time.